Hello, a very good morning. Welcome along to your first Ireland AM of the week.
The first, it's Tuesday.
Good.
Hopefully, a lovely bank holiday weekend, and you're raring to go to get back into the swing of things. Not really.
No.
Yeah, well, look at it's Tuesday.
Bank holiday weekend's the way forward.
All the way forward. Let's just do it all year round.
So good. We have lots on the way today, but first up to Mark. Safer Internet Day, we're going to be talking about online bullying and tips for parents and for young people on how they feel safe on the internet.
And with hairdressing sector voicing their concerns with the planned VAT increases, we'll be hearing from some of those affected.
And we're also going to be catching up with broadcaster. I'd say she loved that broadcaster.
Star.
Just
Vogue
off
Williams.
the ski slopes as well. Vogue Williams is going to be talking to us about everything from podcast to parenting. Guess who else is off today skiing?
Off skiing. I was looking at her Instagram down the slopes.
The best of life.
Is on the slopes at the moment, but she will be back tomorrow. But we have Katya here from the weekend team. Good morning, Katya. What else have we got lined up?
Yeah, I'm keeping wearing seat nice and cozy, but I have to say, Tommy, you got the memo today because today is all about pink. Yes, so
thank you. Exactly. I'm glad one of us did.
One of us did. Yeah.
We're kind of a bit more back in the autumnal, maybe.
Yes.
But yeah. So from candy floss to fuchsia, we're helping you style the colour pink today on the catwalk. In the kitchen, we're making breakfast waffles. Plus, we're putting all our eggs in her basket. Ali Ryan fills us in on the latest Love Island gossip. What you guys think about yesterday?
What is the latest?
Well, now, we have Lana, who has a lot of decisions to make, so I'm excited to hear about what Ali's got to say about that.
Yeah, because she's swapping guys and she's going back to one who hasn't treated her well. Yeah, all the gossip. Loads of gossip coming up. That's
no
later
idea.
on.
All I know is that pink is the way forward.
Pink is the way forward. Tommy, you're in there this morning.
OK, it is time to get your first news of the morning. Over to you, Cliodna Russell.
Thanks, Tommy. Good morning. A major search and rescue operation is continuing in Turkey and Syria following two deadly earthquakes. The death toll has soared to more than 4,300. Over 10 search and rescue teams from the European Union have been mobilised to help with the recovery.
Dramatic footage in the aftermath of Monday's quake. Buildings collapsing as people fled from the scene. The death toll from the disaster has continued to rise after a 7.8 magnitude earthquake rocked wide swathes of Turkey and Syria early on Monday morning. Rescue workers and residents in multiple cities across the two countries searching for survivors, working through tangles of metal and concrete. Rescue efforts were initially hampered by major aftershocks, including one nearly as strong as the initial quake, continuing to rattle the region in the hours after. The quake, which was centred in Turkey's southeast, was felt as far away as Cairo. The Turkish president has labelled it the worst disaster of the century, since a similarly powerful earthquake in 1939 killed more than 30,000 people. The EU has mobilised search and rescue teams while also activating the Copernicus satellite system to provide emergency mapping services to the Turkish authorities. Aid has also been announced by a number of other countries, including Israel, the UK, Russia and Pakistan. Rescue efforts are continuing in both countries, with the death toll expected to rise further in the coming days. Rob O'Hanrahan, Virgin Media News.
President Michael D. Higgins has extended his sympathies to the people of Chile following deadly forest fires which have led to the loss of life and many injuries. Over 250 wildfires have spread through the country. Many are still burning out of control.
The deadly wildfires have been burning in Chile for days now. Hundreds of blazes alight across the country. Unusual winds and a scorching heatwave fanning the flames. Firefighters are only managing to fight a few dozen of the blazes as they prioritise the most dangerous. Aircraft with water tankers are set to arrive from Argentina and Brazil to help bring the flames under control across thousands of acres of forests. Many homes have been destroyed and the number of people who've died in the flames has risen, with hundreds injured, some critically. A state of emergency is in place in the central region of the country today. Police in Chile have detained a number of people in connection with the deadly fires. Marie Mulcahy, Virgin Media News.
A survey by Ireland's online safety charity has found that 50% of children say they spend too much time online. The CyberSafe Kids survey also found that almost a quarter said they'd seen something online in the last year that they wouldn't want their parents to know about. The charity has launched a Same Rules Apply campaign to emphasise that the same parenting rules should apply in the online world as in the offline world. The US President Joe Biden will today deliver his State of the Union address to the House of Congress. It'll be his first such address since Republicans took control of the House. It's not clear if the president will comment on reports that he mishandled classified documents as part of tonight's address. The world is producing record amounts of single-use plastic waste, according to a new report. The second Plastic Waste Makers Index found the world generated 139 million metric tonnes of single-use plastic waste in 2021, which was 6 million metric tonnes more than in 2019. It comes despite global efforts to reduce plastic pollution and carbon emissions.
For car insurance, van insurance or home insurance, call the Quote Devil. Unless, of course, you've got money to burn.
This morning we'll see cloud and patchy rain extend from Ulster to western Munster, with drier conditions and overcast skies for more eastern and southeastern counties. As the morning progresses, the patchy rain will ease, with sunny spells starting to move into western Ulster and western Connacht. Highest temperatures of 8 to 11 degrees. Patchy rain will extend this afternoon, although much of the rain will die out. Sunny spells or longer periods of sunshine will follow in for Connacht and western Ulster, while it's likely to remain rather cloudy for Leinster. Temperatures should rise to between 9 and 11 degrees. Some more patchy rain is possible tonight. This will start to move back to the north as the night progresses, with drizzle and patchy rain developing over Connacht and western Ulster. Munster, Connacht and Ulster may see some fog in the first part of the night, but strong winds will disperse this later. Temperatures should fall to between 3 to 7 degrees.
For first-time drivers, young drivers, returning drivers, if you've had an open claim or have had too many penalty points.
The Quote Devil's always got one hell of a quote.
Time now to take a look at this morning's paper, starting with the Irish Times. Its headline, Death Toll in Turkish and Syrian Earthquakes rises to over 3,000. International rescue missions rushed to Turkey and Syria last night after one of the most powerful earthquakes to hit the region in at least a century.
It was like the apocalypse. So many wait for rescue. That's the front page of the Irish Independent. The World Health Organization have warned the final death toll in Turkey and Syria disaster could be more than 20,000.
The Examiner also leads with that story. Quake death toll nears 4,000. Actually, above 4,300 at the moment.
Moment of hope amid the horror is the top story of the Mirror. Plucked alive from a Syrian building, a rescued girl brings a ray of hope in the hell of yesterday's killer quake.
The Sun goes with Irish teens in quake hell. A group of Irish students and their teachers narrowly avoided the earthquake that has levelled a Turkish city.
The Herald leads with vigilante attack on sex assault accused. A man accused of sexually assaulting a girl in Dublin suffered head injuries after being confronted by up to 40 vigilantes, a court has heard.
The Star leads with Kinahan tried to pay us blood money. A sister of feud victim Michael Barr has revealed that Daniel Kinahan tried to apologise to her family and compensate them for his murder.
And finally, the Daily Mail goes with spike in teachers' career breaks. More teachers are on career breaks than ever before as schools continue to battle acute shortages. Now we're going to take a quick break, but up next, Anton Savage is going to join us and we're going to run through all the top stories. We'll see you in a minute.
This. Now, the death toll in Turkey and Syria continues to rise after the region was devastated by one of the strongest earthquakes to hit them in a century.
And joining us now with that story and everything else in this morning's paper is News Talk's Anton Savage. Good morning to you, Anton. I mean, appalling scenes we were seeing from this earthquake, and we're saying now that over 4,300 people have lost their lives, and that is going to continue to rise.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awful thing to have to say, but even when I was listening to you going through the front page of the papers, if you looked at the death toll reports, it starts at 3,000, I think, with the Irish Times, which is confirmed deaths so far. Then it moves to 4,500, which is assumed deaths so far. And then the World Health Organization is projecting where they think it may...
20,000.
20,000 people may die. And it's it is one of these where it isn't just the initial horror of the earthquake, because there was the initial earthquake, 7.8 on the Richter scale.
Look at that. Look at those pictures.
But that's what's now happening, is that as rescuers are moving into areas like that, the aftershocks are taking buildings that were already weakened and causing them to collapse, sometimes with people inside, sometimes as rescue workers working side by side to try to extract bodies and people. So it's extraordinary devastation. One of the locals described it, I think a 23-year-old man was interviewed. He said it was like the apocalypse.
Wow. I mean, and what you don't see there is the sub-zero conditions, the freezing rain, and we're seeing people digging with their hands through the night trying to save it was crazy. I was listening to somebody saying that they're calling for silence so that they can listen to people who are struggling.
Screaming, trying to get out.
And huddling around fires in there.
And now the response has been significant, which is, I mean, if there's any silver lining, and it's not much, it is that there has been a huge response. 10 teams from all the way across the EU, crews from as far away as New Zealand are offering assistance. But the
We've pledged 2 million.
Yeah, and even those most in need of support themselves. Ukraine has come to provide aid and is sending crews, of course. But reports would indicate that the earthquake was so significant that it was felt in Cairo on the one hand and Greenland in the other. It's horrendous.
Turkey now, they're saying it is one of the world's most active earthquake zones, and a similar earthquake, they said, to this 7.8 magnitude tremor, 1939, 33,000 people died. I mean,
I suppose there's two things with this that I'm not sure people would immediately associate with Turkey. I don't think you, first of all, don't think of it as an earthquake zone the way you would with California. The other thing is you don't think of what you mentioned, which is the cold temperatures.
I was just thinking that this morning, sub-zero temperatures in Turkey. I was going, really?
But they have...
But it's the certain parts of Turkey,
and brutal winter, and that means that some of the people who are now displaced out of their homes, because you're talking apartment blocks, like hundreds of thousands of people now out on the streets in temperatures where hypothermia becomes an issue, where they don't have clothing, where they don't have sport. It's going to be a long time before this.
And we've got to remember that some of these were refugees because of that ongoing civil war in Syria. So a lot of them were displaced anyway.
Correct. And there's also other knock-on effects of that, which is things like there's reports of a prison in Syria where combatants had been held. That as soon as the earthquake happened, there was a mutiny in the prison and people started trying to break out. So even that, how do you restore any kind of normalcy to an area that was already war-torn and now has this to deal with?
Let's move on to another story. I was flying in from Cardiff yesterday and we heard about the closures in Dublin Airport, and Donegal Callan was there. Fingers crossed it gets diverted to Cork. So we didn't have to land into Dublin. But this is this is an
mad
insane
story.
So 3 days, in the last 4 days, they've had to cancel flights because of drone activity.
Or divert flights.
Right.
So some back to Manchester.
Yes, this is...
So instead of landing in Dublin, you're in Manchester.
Or Belfast, or if
Shannon.
you're lucky like Donegal Callan, you get to go to Cork. But sure, Shannon, Cork, Belfast, and some return to the UK because some, to use a technical term, Muppet has been flying a...
Is it just one person, do we know, or is there a number of people?
Well, this is interesting. Do you remember years ago there was a big issue with Gatwick? The Irish Times did interesting reporting on this. Gatwick had a similar thing.
This is drones. People are flying their drones around
the airport.
Which, of course, is banned and illegal, and you're not supposed to fly a drone within 5 kilometres.
Areas,
Because one of the things they do, they have a thing called chicken cannon. I'm not making this up. They have a chicken cannon, and when you make a jet engine, they shoot chickens into it to make sure that it can ingest birds. A chicken...
To make sure it can.
So, you know, it's a bird. It has to be able to come out and not damage the engine. So you test it for ingestion of birds. Drones are not birds. Drones are full of metal parts, and if they get sucked into an engine, they do damage that it's not meant to withstand. Plus, if an aircraft is coming in at 170 miles an hour to land, and it smacks into the windshield with the drone, it causes huge problems. So what happens is, even though they are relatively small, as soon as one's seen within 5 kilometres of the airport, everything shuts down and all the flights get sent away. They did this in Gatwick and shut down Gatwick Airport a number of years ago, and there is now a question as to whether or not there was actually a drone there at all, or did somebody just think they saw a drone and the airport ended up getting shut down. In this instance, there's fairly good evidence that there was a drone flying around.
I'm sure air traffic control is seeing this on their systems. No,
it's usually just...
Well, then how do they know if it's a drone as well?
I'm wondering, who's watching out for drones?
Well, the reason they're fairly sure...
The drone watcher at Dublin Airport. He's there with his binoculars on the end of the runway.
Instead of plane
It's being reported to have been a Dublin Airport staffer on their way home who drove out and around the airport, saw one and reported it back in. Now, one of the things at Dublin airport, they're in an awful position because to some extent they want to say, stop flying drones around the airport. The other is they don't want to draw attention to it because the more you talk about it, the more some
people,
wally decides, oh,
I have a drone,
I'll fly my drone around the airport. So
it's not easy
Michael
to get
O'Leary.
but it's not easy to fly a drone up in that area. Like, there is restricted airspace, and it actually won't take off unless you know the kind of way to get behind the system.
You know a lot about this, Tom.
I do, I know.
So where were you yesterday, Tommy?
Did Donica call you and say, I want to go to the weekend?
Donica had it all planned to get a flight diverted. But no, there is, whenever you have a drone, to get it to take off in certain areas, you have to...
Is that because of the Grand Dublin Airport?
Yeah,
There's a certain code or something?
If you're in New York, for instance, like, it's impossible to get a drone up off the ground because there's all restricted airspace.
Did you know this, Anton?
I knew that they had little GPS locators and they know where they are. So if they're in the wrong place, they say, no, not doing it.
Oh, so the actual drone will not come up because it knows it's not in. But it's obviously the drone that's around Dublin Airport.
Correct. Somebody overwhelmed its little brain. Because the law is that you can't fly a drone within 5 kilometres of the airport. And Ryanair has put out a statement saying, more or less, tick-tock, Minister Ryan. When are you going to make sure that this ceases to happen? I would have thought at first glance the solution comes in the form of a .22 rifle and somebody with time in his hands. But
or the chicken shooter.
One good chicken cannon and you're away.
OK, let's move on to the final story. This is actually front page of the Irish Times this morning. So it turns out marriage is good for you.
Yes. Marriage is very good for you. Marriage makes...
Shall we qualify this now?
Give me time. Marriage makes you less likely to be diabetic. Now, this is one of those things where people who aren't married will look at this and say, this is another one of those things about how wonderful, happy spouses and the contentment in your life makes you healthier. Not so. It's not that you're happier, you're just healthier, because even people who are in miserable marriages are less likely to be diabetic. So you may go home every evening and think,
why? If you're miserable,
I can't stick him or her.
Why is just because you're with somebody, a man, a woman, or whatever? That your diabetes is less likely.
Correct. So you may live in constant strife and anger, but at least you have regular meals.
Well, there you go.
That's what it's down to.
Well, it's another one of these ones where researchers do things and at the end say, you figure out why. So I'm making big inferences, but I'm assuming you're more likely to eat in a regular pattern if you're sharing eating times with someone you live with. But either way, even if you can't stick your spouse, the fact that you have them makes you healthier.
Do you think that is the reason why you have less chance of developing diabetes because you're married, so you just eat more meals together? 0896 111.
Or is it just the love that surrounds you?
No, it's not love.
No,
it can be love. It can be total, absolute hatred. You still last longer.
Anton,
that's good to know anyway. Everybody's going to be talking about this today now. This will be on every television and radio station today.
Marriage is good for you.
Marriage is good for you.
Happy.
Are you happy in your marriage? Let us know. And why are you happy in your marriage?
Absolutely, we'd love to. Or if not, give us some funny stories. It's time for a break now, but up next we're going to be marking Safer Internet Day by learning ways we can all make it more responsible online.
Catch us after the break. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. Being a teenager can be hard enough without the added issue of navigating the online world.
Yes, and with that issue can cause a lot of stress and anxiety for not just teenagers, parents as well want to protect their children. So join us now to discuss this is Áine Lynch from the National Parents Council and WebEye's youth panel member, Prachi Agrawal. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Thanks so much for coming in. Áine, let's start with yourself. The Internet Safe Day. Tell us a little bit more about this, because I'd say a lot of parents at home are worried about teenagers and the amount of use they're seeing on their phones.
Yeah, teenagers and younger children, actually, now we're seeing more and more parents concerned about their younger children's use. I suppose Safer Internet Day is about Europe kind of putting a focus and a spotlight on the internet and making sure that, you know, at least one time in a year we kind of concentrate on this issue and educate parents but also young people around staying safe online.
Absolutely. And are there any major themes that we're highlighting for this campaign this year?
There's a number of themes we're highlighting. I suppose particularly in the National Parents Council, what we're trying to promote is parents actually sitting down and having a conversation and getting an agreement with their young person around the internet. And I think what's really important with that is not just the agreement at the end, but the discussion that happens. And I think it's really important that parents have a positive discussion around the internet with their young people and hear what their child or teenager is doing and enjoys doing online. Because too often the conversations in home are a tense kind of battle around times and what they're accessing. Whereas I think it's really important that the conversation around the internet isn't always about those tensions, but it's about trying to understand why the internet is so important to their child or their teenager.
I mean, I think communication is such a huge part between parents and their children as well. Perhaps from your point of view, what's your experience been like, say, using the internet? Do you come across stuff that you don't want to come across? You know, how do you try and stay safe?
I think the online experience is so vast and it has so many different components that it's impossible to sort of categorize it as a really good or really bad experience. But what I think is really important as a young person when talking about my online experience, to talk both about the negatives and the positives, because they both exist and it's really integral that we kind of shed light on both. Like, yes, there is a pressure to kind of be online all the time, to kind of be present in group chats, to regularly post. Sometimes it's like mentally draining, addictive, distracting, but I also see it as a really wonderful resource and a really powerful tool, not only for young people, but for everyone, like of all ages. Like, I've learned so many things, seen through so many things that I wouldn't see on mainstream media, and that's like widened my worldview. I've seen so many opportunities and it's had a really positive impact on me. And my experience is just one in millions of others, but I think what all young people can agree on is that to every positive there is a negative, and it's really important that we talk about both. And about your question on if I've ever felt unsafe using it, it's actually really interesting because I don't think a lot of people know, myself included. Social media and the internet has become so passive that all we think we're doing is like scrolling or liking things on Instagram. But in reality, we're doing this without feeling anything or reflecting. So all of these like horrible, like useless, like harmful things like or cyberbullying or hate speech becomes like a normalized thing almost. So when we do come across it, we're like, haha, funny, or it doesn't really matter. And that's, I think, a really harmful thing in itself. So.
Well, I mean, because you are a youth panel member of WebWise, you're using a really clever campaign, an amazing campaign at the minute. You know, we'll take a quick look at it now.
Kai, what do we do?
Okay, so put like a full one of those in.
She's never gonna live this down, is she? Oh my gosh, you're just trying to leave. You're just trying to leave. I don't want to see it.
It's really that easy, you know, like a comment like that. And I think there's such a fine line between a joke and actually insulting someone and really hurting them deeply. I'm sure you talk about this with your peers. Like, what are your major concerns when it comes to comments on videos and TikToks and things like that?
I think the biggest, most terrifying thing for young people, both online and offline, is to be put in this negative social spotlight, just like what we saw in this video there, and just like what you said there. The line between bullying and joking has become blurred so much that people's closest friends can turn out to be their bullies just by posting like secretive or private things online as a joke without even meaning to hurt them. And what exacerbates this even more is that there's a kind of stigma surrounding standing up for yourself. Like, people are perceived as babies, as too sensitive, as like bad friends for getting their friends into trouble. And this creates like a really horrible paradox of like, if you're being bullied online and you stand up about it, you're bullied offline or you lose all your friends, which is a horrible cycle. And naturally what people do to avoid this is to go along with the joke, which is extremely detrimental for their mental health and self-esteem in the long run.
From a parent's point of view, Áine, what can parents do? Because we see teasing and we see what might be seen as a joke, but things get a little bit more serious. And as a parent, you see your child maybe go into themselves. How do you approach this with children? Or are there any tools, anything that they can do to try and protect their children?
Well, I suppose all this week we're doing sessions around that, getting that online agreement, because I think having established rules in place is really important. But I think one of the things parents sometimes become very overwhelmed when they see campaigns like that and hear Prachi talk. They can become very overwhelmed and feel, well, I can't do anything in this, it's out of control. And I think one of the biggest protective factor a parent can have for their child is having a good relationship with them, whether it's internet safety, whether it's drugs and alcohol. What children and young people need to know is that they can go to their parents, they can tell them anything, and they'll be quite confident in the type of response they'll get. When children and young people won't go to their parents, it's because they're worried that parents will overreact, they'll make it worse, and they'll think that they're to blame in some way. So I think establishing that good open relationship, really listening to your child and young person and understanding where they're coming from, I think is the biggest protective factor. We often look at technology and all of those kind of things to protect, but actually a parent has the tools already from the offline world, and it's about applying those to the online world and really creating that really trusting relationship with your child and young person.
I think it's the whole thing about the conversation, just making it a safe space for them to go to the parents in the first place, because, you know, kids are so tech savvy now. If they wanted to hide something, they probably could. So exactly that. But how do you think parents should approach, like, let's say in your situation or a friend's situation, what would be the ideal scenario?
I think one thing I would definitely say for parents not to do is put down the iron fist. Like, to download all of these crazy, like, apps and controls and kind of, like, interrogate your child daily on, like, their online usage. Because as we progress in the 21st century, like, the internet is becoming so pivotal to our development, whether that's social, mental, educational. Like, we need the internet. And if you kind of treat online usage as a kind of thing to be locked away in a safe, it's just going to create a really horrible online experience for us when we grow up, because we perceive it as a really bad thing. What we can do instead is just communicate, like Áine said. Like, if you think your child is spending too much time on Instagram, have a conversation. Sit down on the couch and talk about, hey, what can we basically do to maybe limit your usage? If you think your child is neglecting, like, schoolwork or homework, scrolling on TikTok, maybe sit down and compromise on a time limit that you both agree on. And I think through this communication, through learning together and finding solutions together, you're not only making the child so much more comfortable in their online usage, but you're also bonding in terms of online usage.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I already feel out of my depth trying to talk to my daughter about being on her, like, tablet or whatever else. And just reading the statistics, 41% of 9 to 10-year-olds have their own smartphone. So, you know, trying to see them into things. Exactly, and trying to deal with that as well. It's really, really interesting. We'd love to get your thoughts on this, 0896 111 111, because it is, of course, Safer Internet Day. And what do you do if you have any tips for any parents out there? Listen, thank you so much, Áine Lynch, CEO of National Parents Council. Thank you for joining us, and Prachi Agarwal, youth panel member of WebWise. And, of course, if you want to get more information, go on to npc.ie or webwise.ie. Great to have you both with us. Now, Alan, what else is coming up after the break?
Well, Tommy, we're going to be meeting 2 members of the hairdressing sector who are opposing the upcoming VAT rate increases. We'll see you after this break.
That's great to have you back. With VAT rates for the hospitality sector set to rise at the beginning of March, hairdressers across Ireland are worried for the future of their businesses.
And here to chat to us is Vice President of the Irish Hairdressers Federation, Lisa Eccles, and on the line we have Tipperary salon owner Nicola Kennedy. Good morning to both of you. Thank you very much for joining us. Lisa, let's start with you, and as Vice President of the Irish Hairdressing Federation, how worried are your members at the moment about about the VAT rate going back up to 13.5%?
Well, we had a survey recently with our members, and it's the main concern that they have. We're after coming through a really rough couple of years of closures through COVID. You know, we've a lot of salons that are really battling to just try and, like, you know, tread water and stay open at the minute. We've had an awful lot of other increases increases come our way. So minimum wage has gone up, and we also had the new
which is all good news.
Oh, all good news. And we all we're delighted, and same with statutory sick pay. I'm happy to see all those things come in, but we do have to find the money to be able to pay for them. And when this VAT increase comes, there's no way that like salons can absorb that increase, so it has to get passed on to the client. And the concern there then is that people are already very stretched with, like, you know, the cost of living crisis as it is, and we're worried that a lot of people will look for other options, and that perhaps leads into the shadow economy, where then the government aren't going to get any VAT revenue from that at all.
Now, when you say the shadow economy, what does that mean?
It's people who basically work from home,
doing their own,
and don't pay tax.
Hairstylists who would have worked in a salon are now just having a few clients into their house.
Yeah, and obviously aren't registered and don't pay VAT. Because I don't mind. Like, there's a lot of people that work freelance, but they are registered, and that's perfect. That's what we want to see. But this is just a real concern for us because, you know, salons really are they're an important hub of a community a lot of the time. We're a driver of footfall into city centres. So the last thing I want to see is more salons closing, and it's already started to happen this year.
Listen, we're all for small business and making sure the businesses and the high street are thriving. But at the same time, restaurants and hotels are all going to be going up. Do you really think that hairdressers will be any different?
As in with our prices going up?
With going up to the VAT rate staying as it is.
Yeah. I mean, I would just hope that the government would look to the fact that we are a labour-intensive industry. We can't really digitise any of our services. There's not really any way that we can try and make savings, even all of the energy costs that we've had this year as well. So it's something that I feel we really could do with that little bit of help. The government is always saying, how can they help small business? And this will just help us to keep clients coming in the door. And as well, you know, for those elderly clients who are quite stretched as it is, living on the state pension, the last thing you want to have to do is have to put up the price of them getting their hair done when it's so much more than just a hairstyle for them. For some of them, it's a real necessity.
Well, let's bring in Nicola here. Nicola, you have a salon down in Nina. So how are you finding it at the moment?
In last year, we just find our costs have just skyrocketed. Like even last week, up to last week, our stock had increased, I think, maybe 4 or 5 times. So now, since January of 22, our stock has gone up 21%. Electricity has gone up. And at the same time, even though the government had given an energy grant, we don't qualify for it because it's based on usage and rates from September 21. So we're just slightly under the threshold of getting back grants. We have seen a drop in people coming in, as in they're pushing out their appointments a little bit more than what they usually would have done. So I just feel like if this goes up more, it is going to destroy smaller businesses, definitely.
Have you had to put up your prices already, Nicola? And do you think that you're going to have to put them up again?
If the VAT rate comes in, I think definitely it is going to have to be something that's looked at. But at the same time, you don't want to. It's hard enough. We find, because we're a small salon in a small town, we know our clients very personally. And I've been in town here now for 17 years. And you do build up a great friendship with all your clients coming in. So when we put up our prices back in November, it was basically to keep our doors opened.
And Nicola, but Lisa, we were talking about this last week. Remember, we were doing it, and we were getting some emails and comments in from viewers who were sort of saying that hairdressers had put up their prices during when they could go in after COVID, because the hairdressers were saying, oh, it's for the PPE, what they were supplying, and then they didn't bring it back down when that wasn't being in use anymore. What do you say to that?
Well, all I can say is I can speak for my own salon. I know we did bring in a PPE charge, and we were also working on a reduced capacity.
Did you bring the price back down?
Once actually the price of all the masks. You remember initially boxes of masks were tenner, and then they eventually came down to being €1. So we did pass that on, and then we scrapped that once we could afford to be able to pay that, because we did have to work on a reduced capacity as well. But one thing I would like to point out is that with all the inflation and with the fact that a lot of salons have had to put their prices up, the government essentially is getting more money because of that, because they do get a percentage of whatever it is that you're taking in. So inflation alone, the fact that we've had so much inflation in the last year, means that the government are already getting extra money from salons. So I just think this is a measure that they could bring in that would really just benefit. I think a lot of salon owners would be so appreciative, and I think a lot of clients would be delighted to see that it being left at 9%.
We do know that the government make money in an inflationary period, but what we don't want to see is that people are not going into the high street anymore, and elderly people who use the service of hairdressers, it's almost as a social thing as well, Nicola. I mean, do you find, you mentioned you've been on the high street in Áine for, what, 17 years?
Yeah, I've been working in Áine for 17 years. So
do you see a shortage of people coming in? Like, do you see less and less people being able to afford it?
Definitely, they're pushing it out. And even, like, I was talking with my clients last week about, like, this VAT rate possibly coming in. And they were even saying to me, like, they will be pushing out blow dries, just dropping their weekly blow dry. It's just, everybody is struggling at the minute. And everybody's cost of living has gone up.
Can I just ask you, do you know, why have your prices gone up with stock? Like, what, is there a reason why stock prices are going up?
In the beginning, we were told, OK, COVID, and then there was a shortage of packaging. Then there was the whole canal. Remember that backup in the canal?
Oh, yeah.
That was the next reason. And there's been 2 more increases since, and with no reason. It's just, it is what it is kind of a thing.
Do you fear... if the VAT rate does go up, Nicola, you employ 2 other people in your salon. Do you worry that you won't be able to keep the doors open?
I'd hate, like, I have 1 full-time girl, 1 part-time girl. And at the minute, would say with the business that we're doing, that is all I can keep on at the minute. And I'd hate to have to reduce hours or even talk about possible closures. It's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah, and it's true. And you were talking about that. You were just saying, like, for people, it was a sort of an outlet to go and get the hair blow dried once a week and getting in there. And you're both saying now that that's dropping off totally.
Absolutely. I mean, I would see it with some of our older clients who, I mean, some of these people come in to get their hair shampooed because they physically can't do it themselves. You know, there's one of my clients has osteoarthritis. I've another client who she was saying, like, she wouldn't even be able to hold her hands above her head for that long to try and blow dry her own hair. So it's a real need for them to be able to come in and to be able to afford it. But I have had 1 or 2 of those clients where they would have been weekly are now coming in every 2 weeks. And, you know, and that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it comes down to loneliness as well. Again, 0896 111 111. I mean, what do you make of it? If you see hairdressers across the country starting to close down. Listen, Lisa Eccles, salon owner, representative of the Irish Hairdressers
And we might as well, seeing that yours are 2 small businesses, give yourselves a plug. Where are you? You're in Kilmainham?
In Kilmainham in Dublin, yeah, Zinc Hair and Beauty.
Zinc Hair and Beauty. And Nicola K in Áine, is it?
Nicola K in Áine, yeah, down Quinton's Way in Áine.
So you'll be packed today. Are you open? I hope are you open today? You'll be packed. We are running in to get the blow dry today.
The blow dries to be. Listen, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. And Nicola, great to have you with us. Now, still to come this morning, model Joanna Cooper bravely opens up about her mum's dementia diagnosis.
Plus, Vogue Williams joins us for a chat a little later, so stay with us.
It's time to take a look at this morning's paper, starting with the Irish Times. Its headline, death toll in Turkish and Syrian earthquakes rise to over 3,000. International rescue missions rushed to Turkey and Syria last night after one of the most powerful earthquakes to hit the region in at least a century.
It was like the apocalypse. So many wait for rescue. That's the front page of the Irish Independent. The World Health Organization have warned that the final death toll in the Turkey and Syria disaster could be more than 20,000.
The Examiner also leads with that story. Quake death toll nears 4,000, and I know it is well over that this morning.
A moment of hope amid the horror is the top story of the Mirror. Plucked alive from a Syrian building, a rescued girl brings a ray of hope in the hell of yesterday's killer quake.
The Sun goes with Irish teens in quake hell. A group of Irish students and their teachers narrowly avoided the earthquake that has levelled a Turkish city.
The Herald leads with vigilante attack on sex assault accused. A man accused of sexually assaulting a girl in Dublin suffered head injuries after being confronted by up to 40 vigilantes, a court has heard.
The Star leads with Kinahan tried to pay us blood money. A sister of feud victim Michael Barr has revealed that Daniel Kinahan tried to apologise to her family and compensate them for his murder.
And finally, the Daily Mail goes with spike in teacher career breaks. More teachers are on career breaks than ever before as schools continue to battle the acute shortages.
Now, another story that's also at the front of the Irish Times this morning. Turns out marriage...
And if it's in the Irish Times, it must be true. It must be true if it's in the Irish Times. The paper of record.
Well, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
The marriage is good for you. There you go. So, or at least for your blood sugar level, that according to research which indicates that cohabitation reduces the chances of developing diabetes.
I'm a bit sus about that. What about you?
I think we're a bit sus, and Des here, I love it. Being married reduces your risk of getting diabetes. Well, I've been married for 44 years to Bridget, and for the last 19 years I've been a diabetic. She's obviously been trying to get rid of me since 2004.
Oh, God.
I mean, what does it say? Why?
You were thinking you were sort of saying... Well.
He mentioned Bridget. So that's Des and, you know, Des and Bridget and Leixlip. There you are. Good morning, Des and Bridget and Leixlip.
Hello, Bridget.
Happy marriage.
We've got one from Christine. I'm 30 years married this March. I am very happy. And last March, I went to my GP thinking I had a kidney infection. The GP told me it wasn't a kidney infection. It was type 2 diabetes.
Oh, wow.
And that's from all the sugar, the type 2, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, well, exactly. But listen, if you're married, this is what they say. You can't deal with the research. But
do you think it's because of healthy, or because you're getting more proper meals?
Well, we had Anton with us yesterday. And
Anton Savage was saying
earlier on, he felt that the reason for it was that when you're married, you sit down and have your meals together, and maybe that's what
you're
helps.
not snacking maybe as much.
Let us know what you think. 0896 111 111. We were also talking about the drones and the amount of flights that were delayed and diverted over the weekend, which is insane to think that
3 days running
flying a drone over the Dublin airport could actually cause so much disruption.
But now you might think, if you're just listening in that or just looking in, that it would be air traffic control who can spot this, but it's not. It's just basically somebody saying, I think I've spotted a drone over Dublin Airport, and they can't take the risk.
Yeah,
but they're so small now. Yeah. Like, they're so small that you actually, it would be impossible to spot with your big, like, you'd be looking all over the place.
But that's what we were saying. How do they know? Is there a drone person out with a pair of binoculars going?
But, like, I wonder if it was, like, a drone person just trying to get a clip for their YouTube video, or some serious drones, because, like, people do play around with these quite a lot. I was in Phoenix Park and someone just had a drone up there. The noise of them.
I don't like the fact that people can fly drones around your house and stuff as well. There's a real privacy issue with them, I think.
Absolutely.
And then to think that they're actually...
God knows what you'd be up to in your back garden.
I don't want somebody to be seeing what I'm doing in my back garden. But there's no way of stopping them. Like, are you allowed to, like, shoot them down or throw something at them? Like, how do you get them to stop?
If it's within that, if it was close enough to your garden, I'm sure you could do something.
I've heard that, like, crime gangs actually can use it to suss out a place. To go and look around the back of the house, check out how you get in and out and all that sort of stuff.
Giving people ideas now.
It's not good. That's what they do. But in talks internal about the flights being cancelled, my mother was diverted to Belfast yesterday, which was far from ideal. She's 70 years young, but still having the extra travel time, and it didn't help.
Of course it didn't, just because some idiots are flying drones.
Exactly.
And, like, there is a 5-kilometre area around Dublin Airport that you're not allowed to do it. But, like...
They should, you
can get around it.
There should be penalties about this.
Well, there should be, and that's what Des, no, it wasn't Des, Bernie just said, that there should be heavy penalties, and it's absolutely disgraceful that someone can cause such disruption. And that's what Ryanair said. Here's over to you, Minister Eamon Ryan. Listen, keep your texts coming in, that we would love to hear from you. Were you on a flight and it got diverted? And what a pain in the neck it was for you as well. Coming up next, former Miss Universe Ireland, Joanna Cooper, is going to be here. She's bravely opened up about her mum's dementia diagnosis. Stay with us.
Now, being in the public eye is not always easy, but having a platform in media can allow people to lend their voice to worthwhile causes.
And that is exactly what Joanna Cooper is doing, as she's recently opened about a cause close to her heart. And she joins us now to share more. Good morning.
Good morning, Joanna.
To you, Joanna. Listen, of course, the cause is your mother's dementia diagnosis, and I will be asking you that in a sec, but I have to ask you about the weekend, because you are the better half, of course, of the Irish scrum half. Better half.
Is that what he is?
He's a scrum half. Conor Murray. And, of course, Ireland had a huge win at the weekend.
We did, yeah, thank God.
Were you over there for it?
I wasn't. I stayed at home with the dog.
Oh,
I know,
really?
for the first time, to be honest. I'm raging.
It was a huge win, though, and a big opportunity for him, because Gibson Park pulled up last minute. Conor, a lot of pressure on him, but he had a hell of a game.
Yeah, he did really well.
And, I mean, good start from Ireland going into the Six
We're
Nations.
excited now for Saturday.
Look at the
What's
two of
happening
them.
on Saturday? Oh, that lovely picture there. What's happening on this
Would
Saturday?
you look at that?
We're playing France on Saturday.
Yeah.
I know that.
I'm
Because he's
sorry.
just
France
told
this
me.
Saturday, yeah.
Sorry, me and rugby.
I've been trying
I sat years ago. I sat beside Gordon Darcy at a dinner, and I asked him what did he do, and he said he played rugby, and I said for who? That's about my knowledge of rugby.
Are you the same? Are you into the rugby? Like, do you follow it or not so much?
I'm into the crack, like I'm into going to the games, but no, I still don't really understand.
So
what's
you
going
in the
on with
lounge,
pitch.
like sort of watching it from afar?
Absolutely.
Well, listen, we must talk about what you're here for as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, you do have a huge online platform, and you opened up about your mum, Terry, her dementia diagnosis recently. Why did you feel now was the right time to do it?
Obviously, it is a cause that's really close to our hearts, and it was my brother got married last year, and for his wedding favours, he had made a donation, and all the cards were on the table to Dementia UK, so we're obviously from the north, and I just thought that was so lovely, and that kind of set the ball rolling. That I just think if you do have a platform, it's so important at some point to use it for some sort of good. Like, you can share all the outfits and makeup in the world, but if there's something that you really, really care about, you should, if it can help anyone, like, you should share it. So after I seen he did that, the ball started rolling in my mind, and I had followed the Alzheimer's Society just to kind of put the feelers out. And then when they reached out to me, I said I would go ahead and try and work with them.
And like when your mum was diagnosed, was there signs up to that you were, as a family, were noticing?
So it's really hard with early onset dementia, especially to get a diagnosis. And because she was so young, we didn't really know.
How old was she?
She was 62 when she got diagnosed, yeah. But again, it's a really long process actually getting the diagnosis when you are so young. So it was just a lot of tests, and eventually then we could put a proper plan in place once we got the diagnosis.
And were there signs for you as a family?
It was more so there was just some changes, and we just tried our best to get a diagnosis.
Yeah. And for you, with the Alzheimer's Association, having that link, have they been really helpful? And for your mum as well?
So helpful in understanding the condition more, and I've learned a lot, and by working with them and sharing it online, I've gotten so much support from people I would never have known that are going through the same thing. Like, I feel like it's really not talked about enough. There isn't a big enough conversation around dementia itself, but especially early onset when it comes to someone who's in their 20s that has a parent who's in their late 50s or 60s that are experiencing it, and it can be quite an isolating place. So to be able to kind of build a small community now of talking to people that are going through the same thing, it's really, really comforting.
Well, a big community, because your platform is huge.
Yeah.
And I mean, it must be great then when you see young people like yourself reaching out to you and going, God, I have been going through that and I didn't really have anybody to talk to.
It's really, really emotional. Like, I shared it 2 weeks ago, and I was terrified sharing something so personal because I've never done it before online. Again, I do just use the platform for fun. So when I shared it, I was blown away by the response and how many people are in the same situation and are finding it really difficult to talk about it, because it's almost taboo because you're talking about someone else's mental health, and you almost feel like you're betraying them in a way by speaking about what they're going through when they can't really. But at the end of the day, you're going through it as well, and it's your parent or your grandparent. So it was so nice to talk to people that are going through the same thing and let everyone know that they're not alone. You know, there are so many people that are going through it.
And from that, did you take great comfort as well?
Yeah,
and
massively.
almost, did you get advice? Anything that people have been watching this morning might be able to take on board?
Yeah, it's more so that it's okay to talk about it. And again, I think I touched on this when I was talking about it in my stories last week, that it's okay to tell people, and for their response to not be like, people don't really know how to respond because there isn't really a way to be like, oh, she'll be fine, or this, you could do this treatment, or you could do that, because there is no cure. So it isn't an easy one to respond to. So if someone opens up to you, just know that it's okay to let them talk and just to listen and be there for them. And for the person that's going through it, you know that it's okay to share.
And you've learned this as well.
Yeah.
It's a learning curve for you.
Yeah. Whenever I first kind of, when my mum was first diagnosed, I didn't talk about it at all. But I have 4 older brothers as well.
Within a family?
Yeah, so I have 4 older brothers and my dad and my sister-in-laws, and together we all dealt with it, but they would say the same. It is hard to talk about with people that aren't going through it, and then so when you open up to people that are, it's a nice conversation.
Is it something, you talked about the diagnosis, it seems to take a long time. Is it hard because it's the dementia, it's quite slow and then all of a sudden it picks up speed?
So it can be. Obviously, there's different types. Again, I'm in no way a dementia expert, but my mum has early onset dementia, so it can be quite rapid. So from diagnosis to where she is now, the decline can be quite fast. So again, if you get it when you're older, it can be a slow progression and you can live well with it for a long time. Sometimes in early onset, it's just a bit faster.
And there's the Denim Day coming up for the Alzheimer's Association.
So that's on the 3rd of March. So you can go onto the Alzheimer's Society website and order some packs, and you can do it in your school if you're a teacher, or you can do it in your workplace.
So wear denim that day?
Wear denim on the 3rd of March and donate.
3rd.
You can also text to donate if you don't wear the denim.
Oh, cool.
There you go. Everybody out with their denims.
And we have to ask you about, you're planning a big wedding as well. Will you be using the Alzheimer's as favours as well for that one?
If we can, we definitely will, yeah.
How's the planning going on?
Good. It's 4 months now, so it's flying.
It's only 4 months?
Yeah, June.
Where are you getting married? Are we allowed to ask?
Yeah, Portugal.
Oh, in Portugal.
Yeah, nice.
So you're
So
all
we're
the
praying
family
for the
going
wedding.
out.
Yeah. Massive
just before the World Cup, you see, as well.
I know.
I'd say it's quite
you
tough
get the
to get in that
tiniest
window.
window. We're getting married on Monday because there was no weekends free.
Really?
We have
because of training
so
and
many
everything on
weddings.
matches.
Yeah, and then everyone gets engaged in the same week and gets married in the same week.
It's a
Literally.
problem. It happened to me. So I went off, we got married, went off to the Maldives, had a brilliant honeymoon, but came back the most unfit I've ever been in my life.
And then straight to the World Cup.
Straight into pre-season.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. I hope you're going on honeymoon somewhere that you can get Conor get a
Way
bit of training
later.
done.
No, we won't get. I don't know when we'll get a
So
honeymoon.
the wedding and then the World Cup has to take over.
Well,
take
fingers
preference.
crossed. Hopefully.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's pretty exciting, isn't it, as well? And so you're just stuck at home because Conor, like, he'd be gone for a long period of time now. So it's just you and the dog at
Me
home.
and Kev.
Why'd you name the dog Kevin?
I don't know. He just looks like a Kevin.
Does he?
If you meet
Do we have
him,
a picture of the
he
dog?
couldn't
So
be
let's see. Does
anything
he
but
look
a
like
Kevin.
a Kevin?
He looks like a Kevin.
He looks like a Kevin.
Yes.
What does a Kevin look
What
like?
does Kevin look like? There's Kevin. Kevin, does that look like Kevin? I would not have said if you'd a million
He is
years.
the most human dog you will ever meet. Like,
Really?
he'd sit up here and I'd be talking to you.
Oh, that's the coolest dog ever, isn't it?
What kind of a dog is it?
He's a cavapoo.
I love.
He's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Isn't he?
Oh, very good. And how's life in Limerick?
Grand. It's not London, but it's nice.
I know you made the big move
I
back
did make
from,
the big move, I know.
London to Limerick, the
I
big
know.
smoke.
I know.
I'm loving it. Let's leave it right there.
I'm glad Warren's not here.
Joanna Cooper, listen, you're a star for coming on. And of course, the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland's Denim Day for Dementia. It is on Friday the 3rd of March. And if people want to get involved, alzheimers.ie. Make sure to give it a go. Jo, great
Joanna,
to have
thank you so much.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
having
Good
me.
luck with the
Fingers
wedding and everything
crossed,
else.
for some good news this weekend, and hopefully they do the business as well. Come on, Ireland.
Thank you so. Come on, Ireland.
It's Ireland, France.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, just because it's breakfast doesn't mean it has to be dull.
That's right. Paul Knapp is here with a vegan breakfast treat. Now, I'm hoping... this is no calories, right?
Oh, yeah.
Zero.
Yeah. Oh, 0
That's
calories.
what I'm telling myself,
Yeah, you
because
can
it
tell
looks
yourself
great.
whatever you want, yeah.
This looks amazing, Paul. Like, seriously, we're looking here going, this is too nice to even try and eat. Look at that.
This is
that is just beautiful looking.
Art.
It's an indulgent breakfast treat for your loved one, you know, like bring them up breakfast in bed in the morning.
That's for Valentine's.
Absolutely,
Then.
it's just a few ideas. I mean, you can serve them any way you want as well. So, I mean, you can serve them with, I say, you can serve them with ice cream. You can put, like, any kind of things that you want. Like my partner, she likes them done a certain way, likes me to present them a certain way and all these other bits and pieces.
Boy, what way do you present them?
In my fire uniform. I shouldn't really share that, though, should I? Catherine, where are you?
So you make this, you put the uniform on and you go up to the bedroom.
Absolutely, yeah.
Happy wife, happy life.
Happy days. So it doesn't matter what the waffles taste like.
Yeah.
Catherine, I didn't embarrass you, darling, wherever you are, OK? Morning. Anyway.
Right, so this is
Well, I'm
vegan.
glad you didn't say in the nude or something like that.
No. Fry kit's much nicer. Anyway, I think we're supposed to be doing some cooking anyway,
Yeah,
are we?
yeah.
Sweet breakfast treat, that was it. So what we're doing is we're doing waffles, OK? So classically, your waffles would have butter in it, they'd have eggs in it, they'd have milk in it. So there's some easy swap outs that we can do to turn it plant-based, OK? So the milk, we're using oat milk. The butter, we can just use a plant-based butter. They're the same swap out. And instead of eggs, what we're using then is we're using some bicarbonate of soda, also baking powder, and then with a little bit of apple cider vinegar to create some buttermilk. So that acid causes the gas, which causes the bubbles, which causes that light and fluffy batter, OK? And then we cook that in the waffle maker. All of the ingredients is up on Island Dam's Facebook page, as well as the Virgin Media One's website. So what we've got there is 240 grams of plain flour, OK? So we're just going to sieve that into a bowl. And what that will do is just aerate it ever so slightly, OK? I'm also going to put in there as well is a tablespoon of baking powder.
Yep.
And then I'm going to put in there a little pinch of salt. And all I would say with the salt is if you're going to use a salted butter, you can probably omit the salt. If you're not using salted butter, then you can probably just put in that little...
What does the salt do?
It just adds a little bit of flavour and stuff like that. You know, when you get like a salted caramel, that it's not salty, but it's just there in the back, OK? So that's that done. What we're going to do is we've got 350 millilitres there of an oat milk. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in there is 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. Now, what that's going to do is, Tommy was mentioning it earlier on, is like it creates kind of like a buttermilk. You know, so when you're baking like a brown bread or something like that, it kind of, not curdles the milk, but it sours it. It's almost like a yoghurty type, do you know what I mean?
But you can buy buttermilk, can you?
Yeah, but this is obviously plant-based, so we're creating our own. OK, and that apple cider vinegar also as well will react with the baking powder, which is going to cause that chemical reaction. You need to leave that sit for about 5 minutes, OK? Which is fine, there's no hassle at all, and it'll do its magic and it'll work away. We're also going to add into our pancake mix 60 grams of melted butter. We're going to put in there a tablespoon of maple syrup to sweeten it, and we're going to pop in there as well is probably about half to 1 teaspoon of, here it comes, vanilla bean paste, all right? So all that is just a vanilla flavour to go into that. So it just gives the pancake like a slight vanilla-y little kick, OK? Right. And then we're going to pop in there our maple syrup. That can go in there as well. So that's just to sweeten it up. So this has been fast-forwarded to 5 minutes. So all we do then is we put the wet stuff into the dry stuff, and it's as easy as that. So we pour in there our milk that's got our apple cider vinegar in there.
And then would the oat milk still be quite thick, like Jerry? Because I have it in my coffee sometimes. It's kind of...
It is a little bit more viscous. Yeah. So
it's like the nicer one out of the non-dairies. Yeah, but it'd be nicer than almond, do you know?
There's soy, there's almond, there's coconut. There's so many types of plant milks that are out there now as well. And all we're going to do, right, is we're going to mix this up, and it literally just takes a few seconds to mix this together. You don't have to go too mad. You don't want to overbeat it, all right? And again, with this, what we need to do is we just need to leave this, once it's whisked together, we just need to leave that to one side for about 5 minutes or so. And what you'll find...
leave it for longer, like make it in the morning, come back?
Not really, because about 5 to 10 minutes, because what's going to happen is, if you can see this is starting now to kind of almost go like a soft mousse.
OK.
So that's the kind of the chemical reaction between the vinegar and the baking powder, creating those air bubbles. And that's what we want to get this kind of like this...
All right.
This kind of light and airy mix, OK? So we've got the old classic waffle maker from 1976. I've got, you know, the bladed hand whisk thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got one of them, and I was doing something like a few years ago with my daughter, and she said it to me like, that's really old. I said, it is. It was made by a company that isn't in business anymore, for one. And it said made in Yugoslavia. She said, Dad, where's Yugoslavia? And you think that is old because, like, I think mid-80s or something like that, it wasn't there anymore. So all we do is we take like a scoop of this. So this would be 125 mils, or I'd say like a good kind of dessert spoonful of this. And that goes into there.
You've just oiled the pan as well. You just oil on the top and the bottom.
Absolutely, just oil on the top, oil on the bottom, and then we're just going to close this down, OK? And then this takes round about, sort of like about 5 minutes to cook. Depends upon the waffle iron, depends upon the heat of the waffle iron, all those other bits and pieces, but between 4 to 5 minutes. So we'll leave that in there. If you put too much in, you'll know about it, because it just goes and comes out the side, all right?
OK, will it start to come out the sides while it's cooking or at the very start?
But that's if you put too much in, so then you know you put too much in. But with that measurement that I've got there, it won't come out the sides, he says confidently. Okay? And all we do after 30 seconds is I'm just going to turn that over, and all it's going to do is just make sure that it all drops down into the mould and you get those lovely deep pockets that they're going to get filled with the chocolate sauce. OK, so we'll leave those cooking away. Our chocolate sauce, what we've got here is in this, we've got, you know, like you get that... how would you call it? That hazelnut chocolate spread. Yeah. So
like Nutella. Love a bit of Nutella.
So there's actually a plant-based, dairy-free version out there as well that you can buy. So it tastes pretty much the same, and it's still got the little chunks of hazelnut in there as well. So all I've done is I've melted that down, all right? And into that then I'm going to add with my whisk. I'm going to, into that, I'm going to add some plant-based cream, so it's a dairy-free cream. And all we're going to do is, just because it's obviously slightly thick, we're just going to keep pouring this in. Now, how much do you put in is down to yourself. How chocolatey you like it, it's up to you. As I say, you can just keep whisking it in and whisking it in and whisking it in. The more you whisk it in, obviously, the more liquid it's going to become and the more kind of creamier it's going to become. And that is like a really, really simple and cheats chocolate sauce, OK?
Wow, OK.
So all we do next is we take a waffle, because that's still going to be cooking away.
Yeah.
As we say,
here's the one we made earlier.
Here's one we made earlier. And we just take that out there and pop that on there. Do you know what we'll do? We'll put 2 on there because it's just the way we're feeling. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a dairy-based or dairy-free...
Which I said is gorgeous, because we're having it here, and it's lovely ice cream.
Yep. So we're going to pop on a nice blob of the dairy-free ice cream, which you can get in most supermarkets these days. All right? We're going to finish that with a little drop
really lovely,
of
isn't it,
icing sugar, just for a visual. OK.
I didn't get any icing sugar. Oh, I did.
You did, you did, you did.
It's all gone.
Onto that, then, I'm going to pop on just a few little bananas, just to kind of ease your conscience. OK. And then on that as well, what we've got is, you know, you get those freeze-dried bananas in the supermarket. So what I've done is I just blitzed up these just to make kind of a little crunch just to go on top of this as well. OK, like that. And then we finish that off with, last of all, we finish it off with our chocolate sauce.
You just drizzle it over.
So you just then, as decadent...
We'll have to save that for Tommy.
As decadent as you want.
Oh, my God.
That's a Valentine's breakfast I'd want in bed.
Well,
with Paul in his fire gear.
Minus the fire gear. Minus the
Paul or minus the fire gear.
No, minus Paul on the fire gear.
Paul, thank you. That's absolutely delicious. Thank you so much. It looks. Put it up there. Hold it up there.
It's a work of art.
No, yeah, there we go. Get a shot of it there. It looks absolutely fantastic. Look at that.
That's just for Tommy.
Wow. That's just for Tommy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, guys.
Thanks, well.
Lots more of Ireland AM coming after this break. See you in a few minutes.
You're very welcome back. Now, the 65th Annual Grammy Awards took place on Sunday night, and my girl Beyonce made history.
Your girl? My girl. My girl,
healthy
Beyonce.
obsession, OK?
Are you going to go and see her? She's on
3
tour,
times.
isn't she?
Yeah, she's not coming to Ireland, though.
You are going to see her 3 times?
You've booked it already.
I'm part of the Beehive pre-sale. Let's not talk about it. It's very unhealthy obsession.
You're going 3 times around Europe to see her.
I know, because she's not coming to Dublin.
I know. Where are you going?
Cardiff, London and Frankfurt.
Yeah, my wife's got her tickets booked as well.
She
Only
knows
once,
it,
though.
yeah.
I'd love to go to the Stade de France. You've played in the Stade
I
de
have
France.
a link. I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
if
great.
You want.
Yeah, no, it's worth playing. But anyway, she's a happy woman because she won. She beat the record.
Yeah, she
a
has
32nd Grammy win.
Yeah, so
She has beaten the record. She has won more Grammys now than anyone else ever.
Yeah.
She is the Queen Bee.
She is.
She is the Queen Bee.
The guy behind her with 31 Grammys was a Hungarian-British conductor, George Solti. I've never heard of him, but like, I was not expecting him to be, you know, I was expecting Michael Jackson or Whitney Houston or something. Yeah.
But you see, he's probably written loads of great music over the years, just behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But let's have a listen to Beyonce's acceptance speech. She got very emotional.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm trying not to be too emotional. And I'm trying to just receive this night. I'd like to thank my beautiful husband, my beautiful 3 children who are at home watching. I'd like to thank the queer community for your love and for inventing this genre.
Beautiful. You know, I think it's great that she paid homage to the queer community when receiving this award, because it is a dance album. They created the genre, and she does reference her uncle Johnny, who passed away with HIV.
Was she in the bad books with the queer community about performing Dubai, though, or something as well? Is that why it was very
There was a
important for
bit
her
of
to say that?
backlash on that because of the way the LGBTQI plus community is treated in Dubai. And there was a bit of a backlash that she got reportedly $25 million to play at the opening of that hotel. So there was a slight bit of a backlash. But you know what? Then she goes on and has more Grammys than anyone else.
She won 4 in the ceremony. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
she's incredible, and her new album, sure, is amazing as
Renaissance.
well. Another unbelievable album of the year, Harry Styles. I love this album too.
Yeah, I could listen to it all day, and it is the biggest award of the night, winning album of the year, and he was so humble about it, and I really do think he deserved it as well. There were just incredible nominees, but yeah,
Great stuff, and he looks great, doesn't he?
does.
Look at him, like
I don't know.
No, but I mean, I just find he's just so cool.
He looks like a baby.
Who else can get away with wearing that?
Because like, but the likes of Prince is gone, Freddie Mercury. We have Harry Styles now. He has to pull through and wear these kind of outfits.
I didn't think his performance was great on the night. I thought his vocals were a bit weak.
Didn't you think he sounded a bit nervous or something?
Was it nerves, maybe?
Yeah, because the vocals were a
The
bit...
vocals weren't as strong because, like, he's doing a massive world tour at the moment, so he's well used to be out there.
And he was on X Factor. He can sing.
I know he can definitely sing.
What about Sam Smith's performance?
I love Sam Smith, but Unholy is just a brilliant, and I love the whole thing with Kim Petras because she, like, it was a night of firsts. She's the first trans person to ever win a Grammy.
It's incredible.
And that's incredible as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And congratulations to her because
she made the announcement
Beyonce,
as well.
Yeah, and then
She made
an announcement saying first trans person. But yeah, I think the person who enjoyed it most.
I loved it. This is the best talk about of the whole lot.
Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. She was giving it welly. He looked like they'd had a row in the car.
Honestly.
He no more wanted to be there. Look, there he is going.
He was getting pinched under the table, behave.
Yeah, he was just looked totally bored right the way through. And the cameras kept cutting to them because obviously it's J-Lo. And he's there, and she's going, yeah, and he's like...
There was one stage that he's, like, slouched over, and she almost says something to him, and it's caught on camera, and he kind of picks himself up, whatever.
There were a couple of funny tweets, like, blink if you need help, and, like, are you on a Zoom call there, Ben?
Blink if you need help, I love it.
To be fair, he just looks like she's dragged him along to it, and he could no more be bothered being there. And she just... And I love she put out some Instagram saying, the best night with my best friend. And then Ben Affleck.
Ben, yeah.
Look, it must be love if he's putting up with that. It's just not his scene, you can tell.
No, yeah. But the tribute to rap and R&B was amazing as well because it was they were celebrating an anniversary of it. I thought it was great.
It was amazing, yeah.
There you go,
Great
absolutely. Night. Well done to all the winners. And to Queen Bee.
And to Queen Bee.
If you're watching, Beyonce, love you.
Love you, Beyonce. I'll see you 3 times on your tour.
So where are you going? Cardiff?
London, Frankfurt.
Oh, my God.
There we go.
Fab. Okay, still to come. Let us know. Are you going? Have got your tickets as well? 0896 111 111. The final hour, she hosts the insanely popular podcast, My Therapist Ghosted Me. Vogue Williams is going to join us for a chat.
In fashion, we're looking at this season's must-have colour, pink.
Plus, Áine Ryan is here to chat about all things Love Island. Stay with us.
Hi, you're very welcome back. We're here talking about the rugby and Ireland against England later in the Six Nations Paddy's weekend. How excited about that. And, of course, France this weekend. But that's because we're talking to Joanna Cooper, who is here, and she is the better half of Conor Murray, who's the Irish scrum half.
But who I didn't know.
You didn't know who he was. He's like, Conor who?
Conor who?
And what does he do?
But, you know, honesty is the best policy here, you know.
Exactly. I think she appreciated it, to be fair.
I know she was like going, yeah, thank God there's somebody else who really doesn't know rugby. But she was here to talk about dementia and the fact that her mother, and she's a representative for dementia, and the Alzheimer's Day is coming up on the 3rd of March, and you can get your packs from alzheimers.ie. But a lot of texts coming in from people, and Geraldine has said, dementia is so heartbreaking. My mum had it the last 2 years of her life. It was so helpful for me to talk to other people who understood what it's like as a member of the family. If anyone out there has a family member going through this, be strong. Talk to people that understand it. Loads of help out there. Unfortunately, people don't sometimes understand this horrible disease and can be quite ignorant about it. And that's what she was saying, that she's mentioned it on her social media platforms, and she was amazed by the response she got. And obviously from young people whose parents or grandparents or whatever are going through this, and she said it was amazing just to be able to open up about it.
And with early onset dementia, it's just the shock to the family and actually how she was quite hesitant to go on her social media and open up about it, but she's really happy that she did. We were also talking about the front of the Irish Times as well this morning, talking about marriage and how actually if you're married, there's less of a chance of you getting diabetes.
No, it's on the Irish Times, so we have to believe it.
So we hear Kate then said, I'm extremely happy in my marriage. I'm married 39 years on Sunday, and every day I look at my husband and I think, what a lucky man.
I love that.
I love that, Kate. Well done.
I love that she said that. Well, we've Liam from Longford who says, I'm 62 years of age, single and diabetic since I was 50. Guess settling down with a woman would have solved all my problems. Sure, it's never too late, I suppose.
It's never too late.
Never too late.
I think that was part of the survey that they were saying that if your loved one or ever has passed away, don't give up, because maybe you can look again and that it does help, and they were sort of saying...
And that you won't get diabetes.
You won't get diabetes. We've had so many texts all morning from people who are happily married and have diabetes, so let's not go down too far on this one.
Thank you for sending in those texts. Now, coming up, Kathy's very excited about this. After the break, we're going to chat to the one, the only, Vogue Williams. Woo! She's going to be here to chat to us. You don't want to miss her.
Very welcome back. Now, it's time to talk about the shade of the season.
Well, it's obviously not, because none of us are wearing it.
No.
Sorry.
None of us but Tommy.
Lorna, you think you'd even try?
Do you know what? I have.
Sorry, Lorna Weightman is here. Practical ways to wear the colour of the season that none of us are wearing, pink.
Do you know what? I thought in certain light, my blouse would kind of come up with a bit of a pinky tone. You know,
No,
Tommy's super on trend today.
A bit of a bush.
Yeah.
But look, we've lovely outfits are all about pink, which I can't wait to see.
Exactly. It's not about me at all.
Not about you.
Exactly. So pink, kind of the popularity of pink started in spring-summer 2022 when we had Valentino, Versace do this massive kind of like... Valentino did a whole show just with pink outfits. There was the odd black one, but it was really, really all about that fuchsia, super bright pink, head to toe. So we're taking our cues from that, because later in the summer we'll have the release of the Barbie movie. So all
Everything
pink is going to come back. Exactly.
Yeah.
But we really want to take the different kind of shades of pink. It doesn't have to be the super, super bright.
This is a lovely pink jumper here.
Isn't it lovely? And it's got button detail, little pearl button details down the back. So it sits off the shoulder, which I think makes it a very kind of elegant, dressy knit.
Lovely, yeah.
And the other thing about it is that the sleeves are slightly cape-like, you know, kind of like a batwing sleeve.
I think a lot of women would love that as well.
They would,
yeah.
I think so. It's also super comfortable, really, really soft knit. But you can wear it the other way around if you wanted to and have the buttons.
The beads at the front.
You could, yeah. So I tried it on to make sure it sat really well, and it does. It's perfect.
So it's nearly two jumpers, because you wear
two
it
for the price of one. Exactly. This is by Kate and Pippa, and it's available from Nicola Ross and Nace. And then if you want to accessorise, you can do that with the same colour. And at the moment, you know, it's still a little chilly. You want to stay warm, but you can still kind of make your way into these new colours. So we've got a lovely scarf, which is ever so slightly a lighter shade.
Yeah.
So the tonal difference kind of creates a really nice balance as well. And then you can wear a scarf whatever way you like. I love the kind of elegant drape, you know, wrap style.
Whatever, yeah.
It's really, really lovely. And again, you can wear that with other things too. So the trick really to making this a very kind of non-intimidating colour is to just wear with a darker colour to kind of get you used to wearing it. Navy and that kind of pastel, colder shade of pink are just a perfect, perfect match. These are chino style trousers as well. So they fit like a jean, but they're not a jean. So there has a little bit of a smarter edge to it. And they have a kind of a ankle grazing finish on them.
Cutaway in it as well.
Exactly,
they look
super detailed.
And tailored.
They're really tailored, so a really good workwear trouser actually as well. And I like to have lots of kind of multi-purpose things in my wardrobe. So trousers, knits, all do that. And then just finishing, we've got a really nice pair of nude slip-on stiletto shoes, not even that high, really neutral. Keep all the focus on the colour.
Exactly.
Now, could you call this pink?
So I'm calling this, right, we're getting into the kind of wine tones, right? So burgundy, Merlot, strawberry, all of those. There's so many different shades when you say one colour, you've actually got this massive spectrum of colours, right? So if you don't want to go for the bright, you can go down a couple of shades darker. This kind of combo is, I love this kind of jumper knit blazer combination. The blazer has a ruche sleeve on it as well, so you can pull your knit or your top down slightly under the sleeve, so you get a nice styled finish to it, and you can see what you're wearing underneath.
So is that jumper the layered look underneath?
Yes,
it's like two jumpers
it
in
is.
one.
It's got like a little chiffon, kind of lighter layer underneath it,
and then bottom of it.
Exactly. You've got another layer on top, and actually the scarf is part of the jumper too.
Oh, okay.
So it's a really nice detail to it, and that's available from Friday's edit. But you'll notice again, I've got slightly different shades, colours, you know, within this outfit. So it just creates a little balance, and you're able to see the difference between the different pieces. So it doesn't all blend in together, which I really like. And then I'm mad for a flare denim. I just love, yes, love a flare.
Are they back in? Or skinny jeans? It's more preferred to skinny jeans now,
do you know what's funny? With denim, it really comes down to personal preference.
Yeah.
What you feel comfortable in and what you feel kind of suits your body shape, and you feel like you can style up yourself comfortably. Denim itself, just the cuts change every season. One will dominate a catwalk, so then we kind of follow suit a little bit. So we've had a lot of flares over the last kind of couple of seasons, really. So it is kind of staying around, but it works really well with just a small block heel. So the flare doesn't sit too wide on the floor. It actually is really flattering, and it makes your legs look longer, which is even better. But also those two colours really work well together. That kind of darker strawberry tone with an indigo wash denim is really good. It's kind of got a bit of a 70s vibe on it as well, which I love.
It's all very casual look here now.
It is cash, and also when we get into hopefully some warmer weather, this is a look I think that will really kind of be a bit of a timeless classic for you. If you want to do pink, but you want to do it in very, very subtle forms, a print is actually the easiest way to do it. And sometimes we're really intimidated by print, but when it's a soft colour, it works really well. The tee skirt runner combo is a fail-safe for summer holidays. They also will pack up really tiny in a suitcase as well, which I like. A good cotton tee is a great basis for any outfit. Even if you wanted to restyle the previous look with the t-shirt underneath the blazer, you're still getting the colour, but you're getting
nice white t-shirt underneath a jacket like that.
Exactly. It's like a staple, I think, that never fails us.
That's it,
exactly. And it's got a little pocket detail as well. And I do like a t-shirt that falls off your shoulder. It's not too structured. And then the skirt is, what I love about the skirt actually is not only the pleat, so it kind of really flows around your hips, it's got a lining underneath it as well, so it's not too see-through, but it's got an elasticated waist.
Love that.
So you can position that on your torso wherever you feel comfortable, you know, higher up on your ribs or down on your hips, whatever way you like.
Belt really needed.
You don't need it.
Yeah,
not at all. This is a great canvas really for just styling whatever accessories you want to. So we're kind of give you a bit of inspiration where you can go with it. Just putting this with a really simple pair of trainers gives the look a very spring, fresh, comfortable feel. But you could put the gold sandals from the previous look in with this and dress it all up.
Oh, so totally,
lots of mixing and matching.
Put the jacket on and whatever.
Exactly. Denim jacket over that would look really nice and really wearable as well. Then we're going bright.
You're going all pink
This is
here.
very Valentino,
isn't it?
feel.
Yeah, exactly. And this is almost kind of identical to the shade they would have sent down the catwalk as well. So very bright fuchsias, cerise pink as well. If you want to go bold, like I have in this outfit, you put all the colour into all your outfit. And it's really, really eye-catching colour, and it catches light so beautifully as well.
That's a nice coat.
Isn't it really nice? It's a double-breasted coat as well, so it has a lovely finish down the front. This is from Kate and Pippa as well. A lower neckline on the coat means as well for springtime, you can see your outfit underneath this. You're not all wrapped up, which I do love it as well. But this one will work all the way into winter. You can put a knit underneath it as well if you wanted to. The dress, what I particularly love about this is the sleeved dress, but also how it catches just underneath the bust line. So the fabric kicks out from there, which is really flattering and comfortable, which I particularly like as well. And that kind of crossover wrap style, isn't it? Yeah, I love wearing that. You know, if you've fuller bust line like I do, I love a V-neck, so it's really flattering to wear. But this is one of those pop-on dresses you can have for lots of different seasons. But if you wanted to put a black leather jacket over that, or a blazer or a white jacket, you can pair back the look as well. It doesn't have to be all the loading of the pink, but you can see the different shades and the different hues and how you can make them totally work for your personal style.
Just a pair of nude shoes again?
Yeah, they're the same ones we had from the previous look as well. I like to do that. It's just kind of like showing how you have continuity with pieces throughout your look as well. So you don't have to have a new pair of shoes every time.
So now we know pink is the colour.
And we should show up in pink
We should show up in pink from now on, until the movie comes out.
Exactly.
Exactly, in July.
Lorna, thank you so much.
Lorna.
Thanks
Pleasure.
for joining us.
A bit of a break time now, but we had a technical glitch just before. But Vogue is fine and she's on the way, ready to chat to us right after this break. See you then.
Hey, very welcome back. Our next guest is an Irish media personality who puts the V in very busy.
I love that. Joining us now to talk all about her amazing career, please welcome live from London, it's Vogue Williams. Hey, Vogue.
Hello.
What's the crack?
How are you guys?
We're good.
Good morning.
Now, I did do a little bit of eavesdropping. Is it true you did the fashion on Ireland AM?
I used to love going out there for the fashion, and I was watching it there. I was actually glad I couldn't get on to you earlier because I got to watch the fashion. And we used to go out in the mornings, I don't know, like 6 in the morning. It was actually great crack. But you stopped doing that breakfast, which is a bit heartbreaking. You used to do a fry out there. It's gone.
I have major FOMO because I'm a newbie here. I'm like, where was the breakfast?
Tell me about it. It's the one thing I miss as well.
You're just back from a fab skiing holiday, and I know you met Spencer doing the jump on Channel 4, which was all about skiing. So is it actually one of your favourite things to do? Does it bring back memories with him? Like, is it a little cute thing you have together now?
Do you know what? Because I've been pregnant for my entire life, it feels like we actually didn't go skiing for the last 4 years. So to go back and to actually ski together was amazing, and we absolutely loved it. It's kind of what we love doing. We love going out, being active, and having the kids there was just amazing. It was so much fun. Skiing holidays are definitely the best.
Look at that.
Oh, there we are, looking terrible.
That's great.
Look.
Katie, we actually did getaways, myself and Vogue, and we used to go and travel all over the place. And I think that was back in 2017, kind of when you just met Spencer as well. And you're look at that.
Oh my God, there you are.
Tommy,
I love
do you
that.
remember where that was?
That was in Ibiza.
Yes,
well,
at that yoga retreat.
Well, can we get any goss? Like, what was Tommy actually like to travel with? Was he a bore? Did he want to go to any of the clubs?
No, he was such a diva, always. Weren't you, Tommy?
I was. Do you know what? We spent more time, actually, the director, taking pictures of Vogue for our social media.
I love that. Well, you got to get the shot.
That is so true.
So poor old Dave, who was directing, literally was the director of photography for Vogue and let the travel show.
He took a good shot. I even used to make him take bikini pictures for me. He was probably like, this is like too much for me. Tommy, you must have thought I was boring though, because I just used to go to bed after filming. I was kind of the boring one. I was.
Well, that's because you were so bloody busy, and you still are so busy. So was it nice to kind of get a holiday to go skiing? And well, is it even a holiday when you take the kids?
I mean, it is a holiday, but like it's as you know yourself, it's really full on, but like it's amazing. Our house is always just chaos and madness, and like once everyone is well and happy, then we're kind of fine, and no one's upset. So no, it's a great holiday.
Is it tough? Like, do you worry? Because like there's so many sickness bugs and everything else, like at home and going abroad. That's the last thing you want is the kids picking up a bug.
That's honestly, it's the absolute worst. And luckily we were in the mountains, so the air is all amazing up there. But like at home, we fill our house with air purifiers. I work with Clever Mama, and they have this amazing air purifier, and it basically takes out 99.95% of all the rubbish that's in your air. And from working with them, I've kind of found out that literally like the air inside your home is worse than the air outside. So I'm always trying to just make our house like as clean and as bug free as I can. And that's why everywhere there's one there. Look hiding over there. Can you see him? He's got a happy face on him. So things like that I think really help. And look at also that's when he first started sitting up.
Oh, so cute.
It's a clever brand though, because since you have kids, you know, you're always looking for things and you don't want to fill your house with stuff that you don't need. So I think with them, it's two moms, and they even have this, like, you know, the way we all have baths in the sink. English people think that's really weird, but like we grew up having a bath in the sink, and they have this bath thing that you put in the sink, so you're actually not slipping and sliding all over the sink. So they've got loads of amazing things. So I do love working with them.
That's brilliant.
So English people don't get baths in the sink, right?
A lot of things they don't get.
I know.
A lot of things.
You're right.
And we do get to see a lot of that, all the differences with your banter. And I have to say, you deserve a bit of credit for being the the glue to my relationship with my boyfriend because we have the opposite music taste, and the one thing we can agree to listen to in the car on the drive is Spencer and Vogue. So
I love that.
I have to thank you because he loves them. But yeah, it is such a good podcast. You really pull the curtain back on your private lives. But I want to know, is there a line that you discuss, like, right, we're not going to cross this. This is not what we're going to talk about, because like you were talking about hall passes and all recently. So do you ever discuss that line ever?
No, we don't really have a line. I think when you're doing a podcast, you have to sit there and you have to just let everything out. You can't really like block yourself from saying anything because it kind of stilts a conversation. So what we do is we just say everything we want, and then I listen back to it. And if we say anything that either of us could get cancelled, I get it swiftly removed. But it's the same. It's the same with my podcast with Joanne. That could go on for an hour and a half, and then it's cut down to 45 minutes. So a lot does get removed.
Oh, really? Because that's the one. Yourself and Joanne. I mean, that could go on a serious tangent. So
it does.
So okay, so that gets edited down. But how are you finding? Because you're actually, aren't you going on tour again? Like you're actually going to the 3 Arena in Dublin, I think. 3 days.
Yeah.
Like, what do you like with kind of going out in front of big crowds? Whenever you know Joanne is just such a pro at it.
Oh, do you know what, though? I'm so lucky to have her because she is such a pro. I kind of feel safe with her there. She's like my little security blanket. But we did Electric Picnic, and the night before I was like, right, no one's going to come. We're going to Electric Picnic. No one's going to come and watch our podcast. It's going to be really embarrassing. And I think something like 10 or 11,000 people were in the tent. It was completely full, and we just had the best time. And now I just kind of can't wait to go and do it again. So I'm actually flying home on Sunday, and we start our shows next week in the Gaiety. So we start on Wednesday next week. And I'm actually, rather than being nervous, I'm so excited because we've got an amazing director, Una. We've got an amazing production team who are putting together a fab set and everything. And I just feel like we've got everything under control as much as we can. And like, it will just be a really fun night out, I think. I cannot wite to start.
It'd be like a night out with the girls, I feel.
Do you practice it, though? Do you, like, because obviously, like, you hear comedians do, like, warm-ups. Have you done a warm-up for it?
Do you know what? That is funny, but, like, we've kind of been practicing it for 2 years because we've been doing it, but we did do pre-show warm-ups to see what would work, because obviously some stuff that you do in a podcast isn't going to work live. So we did 3 pre-show warm-ups in London before we did Electric Picnic, and then I'm flying home early on Sunday, and we'll go home and we'll do we'll practice a little bit as well. But it's a tough one to practice because, like, it's just, we don't know what we're going to say. There's not really a script, and it's just kind of bullet points. You should come. You can both come.
We'd love to go. Well, I'm not about to do that. Oh yeah, Vogue, I never got it. No, I'm not about to do that. Anyway, I do want to know, because Joanne is competitive about the 2 podcasts. Like, do you have a favourite on which one you prefer to record?
But you know what? I actually did Spencer's Big Fish podcast yesterday, and he asked me the same question, and I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I love recording both of them. I get on really well with both of them. Joanne has yet to throw a strop and leave the podcast. Spenny's thrown 2. And also, he doesn't do any of the work. Joanne and I are quite collaborative on the pod, and Spenny just is like, no, you do the topic. So I'm going to say Joanne.
So
I hope he doesn't see this.
Has he actually thrown a strop and walked off?
He denies it, and I'm literally like, ask Imo, our producer. We've had to re-record 2 podcasts. Now, it is in the space of 3 years, but, like, you know that, like, as an Irish person, we're always slagging each other, and sometimes probably I can go too far and get less nerves.
I think it's love language at this stage for Irish people. Like, slagging is a form of love language.
It's a term of endearment if you're getting slagged by somebody.
Well, they don't quite get that, though, do they? Tell us quickly, whenever you come back home, will you be staying at the house and host? Do you ever think that you could move Spencer back full time, or what do you reckon?
Do you know what? I'm not going to go on about Hoth too much because I know people get sick of hearing it, but I do love Hoth and I love going home. It's so relaxing and it's just really peaceful there, but I don't think that we'll move back. Not that he doesn't want to move back. We actually, most of our work is in the UK, so it just wouldn't be possible for us to move back. But I don't think we're going to live in London forever. I think it's we're kind of starting to get that itch of, like, we'd like a bit more space, we'd like somewhere for the kids to run around, and it's just you don't really get that in London unless you're looking to spend 30 million on a house in Notting Hill, maybe. So we'll move out.
You're not far off it, I'd say.
Definitely not. Vogue, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you.
Thanks a million, guys.
Great, Bo. Good to catch up again, of course. She's gone, the therapist is ghosted. It's going to be the gate. It's going to be 3 Arena. Wow, massive. Coming up next, from explosive dumpings to shock recouplings, Ali Ryan is going to fill us in on the latest from the Love Island villa. That's coming up next. Thanks for staying with us. Now, this weekend's Love Island saw controversial recouplings and sparks flying everywhere. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Here to give us the latest on Love Island is Ali Ryan from Goss. Ali, great to have you with us. But before we hear from you, let's take a look at what happened at the weekend.
Spencer, Kai and Aaron were in the bottom 3.
All right, girls, you need to decide which 2 boys to send home.
So the boys we have decided to dump from the island are Aaron and Spencer.
I've decided to couple up with this boy because he's kind, funny, and makes me smile. Casey. I'm not married off. Like this coupling, like I feel like maybe I should have deeped it a bit more.
So the boy I've decided to couple up with is Tom.
Boom. Maybe they should all
There we
deep it a
go.
bit more. What does deep it mean?
I think it means think it through more.
Okay.
Maybe she should think through that sentence more.
This is what we're talking about, Lana, Ron and Casey here, because Lana and
Yes.
Ron have been together.
Yes.
And then there was a recoupling and she chose Casey over Ron, but now she's thinking, did
Yeah.
I make a mistake?
So we're starting to get more into all the characters. I know they're real people, but it's literally like watching characters. So we're nearly halfway through the season. This is also only the second ever Winter Love Island. It's only the second time, so I think everyone's trying to get used to it.
It seems like it's been going on for months.
The others going on to months.
We're only not even halfway yet.
I know.
Normally at this point, there's a few strong couples. That is not the case this time. So Ron and Lana were together since the start, and they seem to have a really good connection. But every time a test came, aka a girl walked in, Ron's head turned. So a new guy came in called Casey. He seems really, really nice. Looks very like Ron. It's just like a Ron double. And she started to get to know him. Now, the boys were kind of talking to her before the recoupling, which happened this weekend. And they were like, you should do what feels right. You should be treated right. So she was like, they even think Ron's treating me bad. So she chose Casey.
And was he?
Yeah, I mean, he kept turning his head. He kept being like, I do like you, but I'm going to go and get to know her right in front of you and sit there.
Which one
while
is
you
Ron?
watch.
The long-haired one or the short-haired one?
That's Ron.
There.
That's Ron.
He was the first partially sighted contestant.
But it's fair enough if one girl walks in and you go, oh my God, I actually have this chemistry. I think I should try it. But it's been 2 girls now. So everyone was like, pick Casey. And I think everyone at home was so happy, but very quickly she's backpedaling. I honestly think he's gaslighting her just a little bit. You know, like she made the decision and then he sat her down and he was like, I don't know why you did that. We should be in a couple. That was a stupid decision. I'm better than he is. And she's starting, and she's starting to panic. And you can really see she's like, oh God, maybe we're meant to be together. But like I was saying, Casa Amor is next week.
This is when it really hots up on Love
If
Island.
he's already turned his head twice, what do we think is going to happen in Casa Amor?
So do you feel for Lana? So Lana's the blonde girl there.
Yes.
Is she coming across well in it? Like, is she?
I think she was, and everyone felt she made the right decision, and she was kind of standing up for women everywhere, kind of like Liberty Poole did in her season with Jake, Snaky Jake. But then now she's starting to kind of go back to him. So I don't know. It's frustrating to watch. I'll be very interested to see what happens tomorrow night. You had seen there in the challenge, she's with Casey now, but Ron chose her in the Gladiator challenge. Gladiator, you heard that right?
Oh my
and he lifted her up and everything. So Casey and him had a war of words last night as well. So I think for Ron, it's the chase. It's the challenge. She's chosen someone else. Now he wants her back. I honestly think anyone in Casa Amor is going to turn his head and she's going to be left single.
Was that the Gladiator challenge that we saw? Were they all in little gold shorts?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. You missed that one.
Well, listen, I would imagine if Casa Amor comes, Lana will find a nice guy over there as well.
Oh, she has a nice guy. Casey's there and she's already like, I'm going to go back to Ron.
But he's not interested in her, is he?
No, Casey does like her.
He likes her, but then she went for the other guy.
So everyone at home is like, choose the good boy. It's literally like the angel and the devil. Everyone at home is like, choose the good one. But she's like, like, but Ron. So it'll be interesting to see. But on the Gladiator Challenge too.
What is it about girls? They just have to go for the...
I don't have enough time to talk about that topic.
Let's not go there.
It's too long.
Let's talk about Sammy and Tom.
Yeah, so they're kind of a new couple. Now, do you remember Tom? We were talking about him every day.
Yeah.
He was the main love triangle. He's kind of gone boring now. He's just with Sammy. They look good together. They're a good-looking couple, as you can see there. But nothing really that drastic has happened. They do seem like they're getting on, so maybe they're legitimate. But again, Casa Amor, I think he's very going to have his head very easily turned because it's happened a few times. But him and Liv, do you remember they were in the triangle for a while? Last night on the Gladiator Challenge, Sammy threw a bit of water her way, Livia's way, and she was like, she has a problem with me. You're just seeing the clip there now. It was a very small amount of water, and they're in South Africa. I'm sure she needed it, but she went to the diary room, she gave out. There's been a bit of a fight now. So she thinks that Sammy has a problem with her. So maybe we're not seeing, maybe there's more tension between Olivia and Tom, and maybe they're back on the cards. I don't know.
I mean, it's a bit over the top to be having a fight over that. Wasn't it a little bit of water?
I think it's hard when there's not much going on.
That's the thing. They've been doing nothing all day, and then something like that so small.
And the other thing is, like this, I think there's more bombshells in this season than there's ever been in any Love Island season.
So we did see 2 new guys come in during the week.
So Casey was one of those. That's who Lana's now with. Jordan was the other guy. He's now with Ellie, another bombshell. But I'd say you nearly forget that they're on the show. Do you know, there's just the main characters are starting to come out now. Olivia's there, Shaq and Tanya as well. So this is, here we go. This is Casey. So this is who Lana is seeing now. Doesn't he look exactly like Ron?
Not right.
Exactly.
Well, he's more hair.
I think he looks
he's
so
more hair.
like Ron.
But like Aaron and Spencer, they were going to go. That Australian guy never did much in it at all.
So over the weekend there was a dumping, and it was quite dramatic because Maya Jama came back, as you spotted, Tommy. Maya came back in, which is rare enough. I don't think Laura did that at all last season. So she came back in, and there was 3 boys up. They were the least popular votes from the public, which is always a really good thing to do as well, because it keeps everyone on tender hooks. They're like, why am I not popular? So the 3 boys were in there, and then the girls had to decide what 2 boys had to go home. So that's not really normal either. It's normally 1 person gets to go. So they definitely want to shake the house up, and that's why they brought in 2 new people. But Aaron came from Australian Love Island. I don't think anyone's ever watched it on this side. Wasn't going to work. And then Spencer was the other guy, and he did really like Olivia, but I just don't think anything's really happening there. He was starting to see Tanyelle. So Tanyelle's the kind of last person that's kind of left there now.
So Kai was left, he was left in. But then that would mess with your head, because you're thinking, I'm not liked. What am I doing that people don't like me?
And he was talking to Olivia right after the dumping, and he was just like, I'm not going to change how I'm acting. It's fine. And to be fair, nothing dramatic has really happened with him, so I don't think it's that people hate him. It's just the
maybe
least.
just bored.
Like Ron is still in the villa. Why wasn't he voted out?
Listen.
I wish we could vote in Ireland.
Bring on... Oh, you can't
vote here.
No.
I'd be getting him out.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Ali Ryan from Goss.ie, bring on the Casa Amor.
Bring on Casa Amor and a bit of drama. And of course, Love Island continues tonight on Virgin Media 2 at 9 p.m.
Now that's all for today. Warren's back tomorrow, but what's coming up tomorrow, Katya?
Thanks for having me, guys. I have to say, I did have a lovely time keeping Marin seat cozy back on memory lane. Well, tomorrow...
Yeah.
It was great to have you.
Tomorrow morning, we are talking about the power of connection with Dr. Barry.
Plus, he played Jack and Vera Duckworth's troublesome son, Terry, in Coronation Street. Nigel Provera was stopping by for a chat.
Yes, we have a busy old show tomorrow, but that's all we have for today. We shall see you tomorrow from 7.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.